Hey, in this course, we're going to run through all of the features on Serum, and then I'm going to show you loads of different examples of how to design patches with them. I'm going to break the course up into loads of manageable chunks, so it's easy to follow and also easy to reference later on if there's a specific thing that you want to find out about. First few modules are going to be based on the tabs here. So with the first one, I'm going to look at the different sound generators, so the different oscillators, the sub, the noise section, and also the filters. Then we'll move on to how to modulate, which is all done using the lower section, and also on the matrix tab here. Then we'll look at effects, and then a brief look at the global settings. Then I'm going to have a dedicated module that looks into more detail at wavetable synthesis, which is one of the very cool and unique features to Serum, which make it particularly awesome. And then we'll get on with some patch creation modules where we step through how to create a bass, a lead, and all of the different classic preset types. So let's get started. So we're going to start by looking at the oscillators. There are two of these, A and B, as you can see, identical sections turned on and off with their switches here. Going through the standard controls very quickly, as these are the sorts of things I cover on my beginner's guide to synthesis. So if you want to go over the basics of synthesizing, as in the standard controls that pretty much all synthesizers have, then I would refer to that. But very quickly here though, you can see at the top we have the waveform displayed, which at the moment is the default, which is just a sawtooth waveform here. But we can click there and then choose one of many other options. These are all pretty much wavetables, which we'll be going over shortly in a later module. One tip I can give you here, though, which is pretty useful, is if you want to get to the standard types, then the easiest one to select here is basic shapes. Once you do that, you can then use the wavetable position dial here to step through the different kind of standard waveform types that you get on all synths. So we have a sine wave. So triangle, square, sawtooth, and all the main ones there. Moving on from there, we have all of the standard tuning controls up the top here, but you've got the three main ones. So you've got octave, semitone, and fine adjust. And if you want to reset any of these, you can just hold down Command on a Mac and click on it. So presumably Control on a PC. And that goes for any of the controls here. On the end here, you have a coarse pitch adjust, which is essentially like the fine adjust, but with a much bigger range. So whereas the fine adjust only goes up and down by a semitone, so in cents, the coarse pitch goes up and down across quite a few octaves. So that allows you to do really interesting modulation. So if you were doing maybe an SFX patch, you could use that to create a smooth pitch slide up and down across a big range, which you wouldn't, of course, get with the semitone adjust. Below the display, we then have the unison section where you can add additional voices, that is duplicate waveforms to the original, which can have a slightly different tuning, or rather detune amount applied to them. So if I just turn that down first and then increase this to 4 voices, what happens then is we get 4 sawtooth waveforms on top of each other. But at the moment we're getting some phasing there, and I'll show you why that is in a moment. If we apply the detuning though, you'll hear the sound gets a lot wider or seemingly wider, not actually wider across the stereo field, as the difference in tuning creates that extra thickness. A blend dial then allows you to mix the sort of central main voices and the additional unison ones on the outside. If I just increase it even further there to 8, or rather 7, that way you have 6 additional unison voices through either side. So you can create whatever balance of those that you want. And to show you the phase and random here, if I just turn the detuning back down, then with random turned up to max there, you can hear we get a slightly different sound every time I play a note. That's because the waveform is starting in a different position for each of the unison voices. So it creates different cancellation every time I play a note. But if I turn that down, so they always start right in the center there, every note is identical. And then a bit of variation, and then the max variation. So changing the phase to wherever you like and using this random dial allows you to create more consistency or less consistency in your sound, particularly at the start of notes. And the last controls on the bottom here, firstly, you have level, which is self-explanatory. Simply the volume. Panning, to pan left or right. Wavetable position, which we'll be going over in the wavetable module. And lastly then, this warping dial in the center here, which can be set to a number of different modes. I'll go into this in more detail when we start to design patches, but if I just select a few of these, for example, sync, which if you've seen my beginner's course, you'll know is one of my favorite warping controls. But then you have some other really cool stuff like bend, mirror, which is another really cool one. So yeah, you can see what's happening to the waveform on the screen there, which is really nice. And as you can hear when I move the controller around, if you modulate this control, then it's a really nice way of adding some extra movement and color to your sounds. So we'll get into more of that later on.